And good morning. We're live on YouTube. It is the Falcons Podcast. We're going to bring in our Facebook groups. That is Atlanta Falcons on SI and Scott Kennedy Sports. 50,000 strong over on Facebook, which means we should reach at least 6 or 7 people today on their distribution system. So if we reach you, thank you. Hit the like and share. Welcome in, everybody. This is a Monday post-combine, cold again in Atlanta edition of the Falcons Podcast. It's always one of my favorite time of years. I used to run combines and ran into an antidote the other day, Nick, where one of the Texas guys didn't run as fast as they were, and I think Ian Rappaport quote tweeted somebody. He said, Texas is going to get in trouble for that 39-yard track. That happened to me, Nick. I was running a combine at a college at a SEC university after pro day. Remeasured it, 39 yards. So wow. I always used to joke with the kids. I'm like, listen, whatever you think you run, you're going to be slower today because I don't give a damn what you run. I'm going to be the first person to ever put a clock on you that doesn't care how fast you are. I might have measured it at 41 yards just to mess with your heads. 39 yards.
You're not going to say what school?
Not going to say what school.
Okay. All right. I'm curious. Well, we'll talk afterwards. Yeah.
That's, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'm still getting over the daycare crud, whatever. So the sore throat is gone now. It's just, mucus. So, it is what it is. We're getting through. Days are getting longer. It's really crazy just how dramatic the time changes out here up in the Pacific Northwest with the hours. I feel like I'd probably lose my mind in an Alaskan winter just because it's still the same temperature, but my God, I feel so much better. You get, we have 3 more hours of sunlight right now. So, we're doing well and excited for free agency, man, right around the corner.
I think we spring forward this weekend, actually.
I have no idea.
It might be. I look it up just because we play baseball and stuff, so it matters, especially when your center fielder, who is my son, stares right into the sun. You only get that for an inning until the time changes, and then you get it for about 5 innings. So it
is this weekend.
I know exactly how the field is laid out east-west wise, but we go live every Monday and Wednesday because we like having the conversation with y'all. I want to say thank you to some of our outstanding supporters who have come in before we even got here with support for the show, like Michael Ronquillo coming in with the Fuchsia 50 super chat. He says, "Good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast." Michael, good morning right back at you. How are you doing, my friend?
Thank you so much, Michael. I mean, gosh, you came in at 5:03 a.m., so well before we were started here. What time are you up out there in Tucson? So appreciate you coming in. And, yeah, this is really, really supportive and helpful. I mean, I don't know what to say. You're just a constant benefactor to the show, and we really do appreciate you on all platforms.
Speaking of sunshine, that's why we started calling him the Sunrise. Michael Ronquillo gets us started like that, and we can depend on him like we can the Sunrise. Coach coming in as well. He says, "Morning studs, win the day." That's a great message. It's a great message. It's a Monday. Kona trudging along. Kids are out of school today, so that means all of the animals come and wake me up. So get them taken care of and then get down here so I can talk some Falcons football. Want to say hello to some folks real quick, but I want to kind of hit on, set the show, tone for the show. We're going to get into some of the risers and fallers from the draft that could be interested for the Atlanta Falcons and beyond. If you've got another team and you're in here and you want to talk about them, let us know. Hit the questions. Want to talk about some news, obviously, that came out of the combine, and it's Tony Graziano, isn't it? Tony Graziano.
I think it's Dan.
Dan Graziano. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I've quoted him enough. I should remember that. So Tony Graziano is probably somebody else in my life. Dan Graziano and usually and one of the Fowler men come out with a weekly column and news and notes, and he had a lot on the Atlanta Falcons this weekend, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, the big takeaway, and it's something that we've said on here many a times, just given the lack of capital, the salary cap space that you're up against, and just how many pieces you need to add to the defense and offensive line as well. Graziano says the Falcons likely to use the most early round picks on defensive players. No shock there. But also looking to potentially trade back from 15 for more draft capital. So Falcons on business of moving back. How far back? I don't know. We'll see. But the Falcons very much, at least right now, I mean, it is Lions season, but Falcons putting out a red light saying, hey, for sale, come get it. 15 overall.
Yeah, and that was my biggest takeaway from the draft, Nick. It's like, what's your biggest takeaway from the combine or the Atlanta Falcons NFL Draft? That's easy. Trade down. That was my biggest takeaway as I look at these players, as I go through mock drafts, which we will do. We're going to finish with a post combine mock draft Monday. I want to trade back. I want more picks in the second and third round. And I don't know if you're going to be able to get another one in the second, but at least get a third round pick out of this. Move down from 15 into the 20s and pick up at least one more day 2 pick. Maybe another day 3, maybe a throw in a 2026. I don't know how interested Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris are going to be in 2026 picks because their heinies are on the line this year. They need to win this year. They need all the help, all the new bodies that they can get in this year. And 2026, if they don't succeed, they might not be around to make a 2026 draft pick. So they need to win now. But my overall thought right now is trade down, Nick. There's going to be several players, and I don't know that there's going to be any one that you just have to have at 15 for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how the board falls. Like I think it was Schefter who said there's a lot of clumping from pick 10 to 35, but keeping eyes on guys like, I mean, Mason Graham has been continuously mocked in the top 8, but measured a little smaller than everybody thought. What if he falls? That's somebody to keep an eye on. Shamar Stewart had an unbelievable combine. Michael Williams, a lot of people are very high on him. I know we didn't get the testing, but exciting to see what happens. And you got guys like Nick Manowari, who tested like absolute freaks who have just unbelievable tape. But I think in the end, again, you just have enough areas where you need bodies that trading down is probably the best move. The question is how far and who's calling you to come up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got to have 2 to tango, obviously. It's like, oh, we'll trade down. Well, I'm not going to just give the pick away. But, I just see so many available at 15 that, and nobody that like I said, that I'm absolutely in love with, that I feel like I really want to trade down. Keith and Ellen Johnson coming in on Facebook with some stars. Thank you very much. And, a lot of folks are talking about this morning, John Harold Jr. coming in with some we had to look it up. John Harold Jr., JHJ. I'm like, JPJ, isn't he the guard from Oregon last year? And I told Nick, I am awful. I was good at a lot of things, mathematics, especially math and sciences. But when it comes to crossword puzzles, I am just awful. Because if I get an answer that is a right answer but doesn't fit the puzzle, I can't come off that answer. I'm just stuck. Yeah. So I'm like, JPJ, the guard from Oregon. I'm done. Just done. So I go through the list of players. I'm like, oh, yeah, James Pierce Jr. And then it seems so obvious after the fact. James Pierce Jr. had a good weekend, Nick. I would think with the interviews and stuff, that was one of the things that was going to be big for him. And then coming in, 6'5", 245 pounds, nice solid weight, and then running sub 4.5. He had a good weekend.
I do think there was some, from what I've heard, not everybody was infatuated with the interviews. So there's going to be some concerns there. I wouldn't be surprised if he's off a good number of teams' boards, actually, from what I've heard. But with all that said, all it takes is one team, right? But you're right, 6'5", 245. Wish he was a little longer, 32.75 arm length. That's fine. Ran really well. The one that was kind of an outlier, I'll be curious to see if he tests again at the pro day. But was it the vertical jump of only 31 inches in the 43rd percentile? All the other metrics, though, very good. Question isn't the ability. Question is the mental makeup and the character side of things. Because again, there's a lot of buzz there. There's some concerns with him.
You know who else was like that? And it concerns me when you see 31-inch vert, but don't run any of the other agilities. Okay, straight line, that's nice. You rarely get to play football in a straight line. The athlete score is the 3-cone and the shuttles. You know who else had a sub 4.5 40-yard dash at his pro day and a vertical below 35? Kyle Pitts. He was one of those guys. And we lament the fact that he can't, because right now, broad jump and vertical jump basically test raw explosion in your legs. And how do I separate? Well, being able to push off my legs. And that's kind of one of the translatable traits right there. So an L cone for an edge is so important. And if I'm going to have a poor vertical, I want to see a good L cone, or, or vice versa.
Mhm.
And we didn't really get to see either one of them. So a little bit of a concern there on that one.
I do want to be fair though, Scott. Very few people do the agilities at the combine anymore. It's just not happening. And a lot more and more people are just stepping out of the combine in general. And one of the big overarching takeaways coming out of the combine is that it does sound like they're going to start pretty soon here. Now, I don't know how it's going to happen or where the money comes from, but it sounds like they have real progress or momentum to start compensating the players for participating in the on-the-field drills, which makes sense. I mean, you're an athlete, you're bringing in money, get a bit of money. People are watching this in the NFL. It's going in to the salary caps, the money from the combine. So the hard thing is they're not signed a contract yet, right? They're not in the NFL PA, but they're going to figure something out here, because when you have so many of the top players not participating, it kind of, it hurts the chance to make money for the NFL. So that sounds like that's coming.
And the guys are end up doing their pro day testing. So I'm very interested in JPJ's pro day as well, because he's one of the guys that should be on the table at 15, or at least right now he's definitely in the discussion. He might not be there, but he's definitely in the discussion. Got some supers coming. Definitely want to get to Victor first. Victor, how you doing? Because I really like this question. It says, good morning, guys. Let's say we can solve 2 positions in free agency and 2 via draft. How would you split between cornerback, safety, edge, and linebacker?
Well, just
ideally, this is just generally speaking.
Yeah,
based on cost and availability, what do you think is the best team building way here?
Well, you're going to save the most money and have the highest probability on hitting difference makers if you go safety and linebacker in free agency, and then use the draft to go after cornerback 2 and edge. Now, that said, in this class specifically, a cornerback 2, edge probably round 1 and then cornerback 2 round 2, but we'll see. That's how it plays out. But for me, with where the Falcons are at, again, I just keep coming back to it. You need to find a difference maker. And if you're stuck at 15, I know that I definitely weight my board by positional value. And people who say they don't, if not, then you'd see Genty being mocked in the top 5 way more often than he is, things like that, or Tyler Warren more in the top 5. But yeah, that would be my answer. I think that's how it would play out for me, just for the economics of the position.
100%. I agree with you 100%. And I had a feeling we would. It's just because of the cost and availability, I can get safeties and linebackers in free agency without breaking the bank. You can't do that at corner and edge. And usually you're overspending for guys that aren't that great. The guys that hit free agency are at best second tier, or 20 and below in top 20. Those are usually the guys that hit free agency. If I know I'm not going to be able to re-sign a guy, they'll usually trade somebody like that first. They don't let those type of guys hit free agency very often. They're either super old or they just weren't that good to begin with. Every once in a while you can get who was the edge from San Francisco that went to the Colts? Sam, I forgot his last name, but he was behind a couple of guys, got $10 million, and was a really good player. The 49ers were loaded at edge. It doesn't happen very often. That may end up being a situation with the Broncos with Baron Browning. Baron Browning's a pretty good player, and he had trouble staying healthy. And it was coming up on his contract. The Broncos had to make a decision, and they basically got rid of Baron Browning. So it's very, very rare. There's huge red flags in his resume. So if I can build through the draft, I want premium positions, supplement through free agency on the non-premium positions. That's the best way, in my opinion.
Yeah, the one I did want to shout out here is DJ Reed, cornerback 2 for the Jets. You have Ulbrich coming over to obviously Atlanta, your new defensive coordinator. Maybe the issue is that you have the Kirk Cousins albatross of dead cap, so that kind of makes it hard to pay somebody like a DJ Reed, because I'm expecting he's going to get a pretty good deal on the open market. Second contract guy has been pretty darn good in East Rutherford. So that'd be great to get. But I just don't see you guys playing in that sandbox this offseason.
Good corners are a lot easier to find in free agency than good edge rushers.
unless the edge rusher is, 33.
Yeah,
It's like a
yeah,
mercenary at
maybe
that
1
point.
year out of it,
Yeah.
which those guys are out there.
They are.
Those guys are out there. Khalil Mack might be one of those guys here before too long. I think Von Miller's toast. Von Miller might be available. I think he's done.
He did have some pretty good statistical output after he came back from that injury this season. I think he was like one of the top 5 players in pass rush win rate. Say that 10 times fast. The last part of the season. So I think he's still valuable, but he's definitely a DPR, designated pass rusher at this point. If you want some juice on third down, if you want to pair him with a true base end early downs. And also I think that he can come in. He's been a pretty good steward for pass rushers as well. If you have a young room or a young player who's talented but doesn't quite have it all together yet, I think Von Miller would be a benefactor to that, not only, rotationally, but technique, bringing him up. What does it mean to be a professional pass rusher?
Keith and Ellen Johnson, good morning. Good morning right back at you. Thanks for the stars over there on Facebook. And Rusty Moore, he's so salty. He doesn't want to make the right moves because it wouldn't work anyway. Trading back is a bad idea. Has Terry shown you he can hit on anything other than a top 8 pick? Algier and Dahlman are 2 players out of 25. Matthew Bergeron is in there. Zach Harrison's okay. Let's see. I think Ebiketie, I don't think he's lived up to his draft status. And who else was I thinking of that isn't that was okay? It was another defensive lineman possibly. But it's been pretty lean outside of top 10. And when I see people, Rusty, when I see people say, because I agree with you, obviously, when it comes to, I've said before, I think the Terry Fontenot's drafts have been subpar. I'm like, well, he got us Drake London, he got us Bijan, he got us Michael Penix, and Kyle Pitts was kind of a myth. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not giving you extra credit for being able to draft good players in the top 10. You're not supposed to be in the top 10 4 consecutive years. There's things put in place that should get you out of the top 10. If you don't get a good player in the top 10, you really did a bad job. Mm-hmm. So that you don't get bonus points there for me. That you're drafting between 33 and 45 every single year and not getting good players there outside of Bergeron. And again, that's a guard in the top 45. By God, you better hit on a guard in the top 45, Nick.
Yeah. It's not a premium position, so you better hit. I mean, you mentioned Mayfield, but you did hit on Bergeron, at least to some extent right now. We'll see. But yeah, Rusty, I mean, I hear you. You look at the round 2 through round 4 hits under this front office regime, and it's been poor despite plenty of swings. So I mean, if I was in your shoes, I think I'd probably be similar to you a little bit. Maybe it is negative, but it's like, what is the history there? Well, they've really struggled at the evaluating talent. And it's not always, I just want to say to be fair to Fondo, it's not always the evaluation of talent. Sometimes it's the development of talent once it's in-house as well. It's not just once you get that player, it's like they're going to be who they are. I think
what defensive draft pick had a chance last year?
Yeah, Ebiketie took a step up, I guess, but that's about it. But I mean, that's the big part for me as well. It's draft and develop. So I don't want to leave the coaching staff without blame as well.
Yeah. I say this every time when I mention that, Justin Simmons didn't play well. I always, or Matthew Judon didn't play well. They should be easy to replace. I always try and mention nobody did. I'm not putting that on them. And I've said before, I think this team can be worse on paper and better on the field because they were coached so poorly. That said, Rusty, you mentioned 2 guys. Algier and Dahlman are 2 out of 25 picks? How'd the Falcons get Dahlman? The only trade down that I think Terry Fontenot has made in 4 years is how they got Dahlman. So increase your odds of success, especially out of the first round, by taking more selections. That's still the right thing to do for this team, whether or not, and it kind of goes back. We hear this a lot. Oh, they're just going to take another edge rusher and stink because, the last 3 they've taken have. Well, that's no reason not to do it, to address a need with the right player. If he's there, you don't, let's not doom this team for eternity because of past failures. Mm-hmm. I know there's sometimes that cloud that hangs over Falcons fans' head, but, this is, you gotta get it. You gotta get an edge. You just have to. If he's not there in the first round, okay, let's go second round. And that's kind of what I found doing some of these mock drafts. is I'll take an edge at 15, and then the player I like at 45, the best one that I like at 45 is also an edge. Well, I could take 2 if I have to. I can absolutely take 2. The one that kind of throws a wrench into things is when Will Johnson is there. He's the only other one that I'm like, do I can go corner here. And we did last time just to change it up a little bit. So Gary, good to see you. Thank you for the super chat, my friend, Gary. Opalka, that's there's several different ways I feel like I could emphasize the syllables in your name on that one. So Gary O, it's good to see you. Thanks for the support. That feels like a newer name to the chat and to the super chat. So thank you, my friend. Appreciate the support.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And happy Monday to you.
So let's get back into some of the other questions we have in here. Keith Brugman, he says, what would you be willing to offer for Max Crosby, and how does he compare to the talent in the NFL draft? Now, coming out, obviously, he wasn't a first-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was a third.
He was
one of those
fourth-rounder.
Yeah,
he had a lot of drug
he was a day 2, day 3. I hit the lottery on this.
Yeah.
This is Tom Brady in the 6th or 7th rarity that I got a player like this, and will be one of those types of players that people say, well, Braylon Trice could be Max Crosby. Yeah, he could. I mean, I could hit the lottery. I'm not gonna. It's very rare for that to happen. How many years are left on Max Crosby's contract? So this is where it starts to boil down veterans. It's not just what would it cost you to acquire him, what would it cost you to keep him? And that starts becoming prohibitively expensive. I don't think, we've talked about Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons is probably the single most valuable piece on defense in the NFL. Who can afford to trade 2 first-round picks and then hand him $30 million? That would be really dumb for the Falcons, no matter how good Micah Parsons is. They're not in a position where they can give up 3 or 4 players, starting caliber day 1, day 2 players, and $30 million in draft and cap space for one guy. They're just not in a position to do that, Nick.
Cost controlled players at that, Scott. So that's just from a team building perspective, that'd be hard to do right now. As far as Max Crosby goes, if you hit on Kirk Cousins, say Kirk Cousins last season's looked like he did, against Tampa Bay for those games, then maybe you're talking about making that move, especially with where the Raiders are at right now, or Myles Garrett out there as well, right? But unfortunately, the timeline changed with Kirk Cousins imploding in Atlanta to a certain extent. So you need to take your medicine this season. Everybody's got to try to, keep their head above water, and the coaching staff in the front office, and pray to whatever football gods that you are, that Michael Penix is the guy. And we got Kiera coming in. We love our Falcons ladies out here. So shout out to Kiera coming in. She says edge or cornerback for pick 15 and 46. Those are 2 value spots. I like where your head's at, Kiera. I think that I'm a little less laser focused. It could be a defensive tackle. It could be a linebacker. And to some extent, it could be linebacker or safety as well. I mean, I'm not picky right now. Just you need some difference makers out there. But as it's stacked right now, those are the 2 positions of value. If you can, in an ideal world, hit on both those picks, edge and corner is how you set it up.
Yeah, I agree, Kiera. This is where I would go also, if I can, is I'd like to get edge and corner with the first 2 picks. We just talked about, Victor asked us a question, do you go free agency? Yes. And then I can get my linebacker or my safety. Maybe I get lucky with my 4th round pick on one of those, or maybe I swing a 3rd rounder somehow and I address that. That said, who's on the cover of today's episode, Nick?
Is it Will Johnson?
It's Nick Emenwari.
Oh, well, I mean, freak. Yeah.
When we talk about guys, who have played their way into that space between the Falcons are picking between 15 and 45, Emenwari's going in there.
He might go earlier. I mean,
you think he could go top 15?
There's some talk that the 49ers are in play there. The Dolphins are in play. It's just after pick 10, it kind of falls apart. So once you get 11, 12, 13, 14, he's in play.
Yeah. And so I put him on the cover because we want to talk about guys who may have made the most money this weekend at at the NFL Combine, it might be Nick Emmanwori. He's 6'3", 220 pounds, ran a 4.38 with a broad jump of 11.6. I mean, that's put a cape on the man type of. He's flying at 11'6". I mean, when I was doing high school combines, anything over 10 was elite. Now, anything over 10 is NFL, and it's still good. 11.6 is unbelievable. That's really unbelievable, and he can play. He's not just a combine warrior. You've watched him more than I have, Nick, because the guy that this compares to was when I was watching college football religiously, and I lived out in LA, and the guy was not a very good football player. He was just an athlete like this. It was Taylor Mays, the USC safety. He was just so much more physically gifted than anybody else that he was able to occasionally. He never really did make any impact plays. What he would do is chase. He would recognize late, and then he would chase. And he was 6'3", 230 pounds, running 4.3s. And he would, he'd come flying across a field and be like, wow, Taylor Mays. I'm like, yeah, he recognized that play 3 heartbeats too late. And he's just gifted. He wasn't a very good player. I believe Nick Emmanwori is a much better player than Taylor Mays with those same types of gifts.
Yeah, so Nick Emmanwori, he's going to be probably best in your strong safety role, but he is athletic enough, long enough that if you're doing 2 deep safety pre-snap and you're trying to disguise which safety's dropping into that robber role and which one's going to play the free safety spot, he can do either of those. Ideally, he's coming down with that length and the size, but he can also, switch it up from time to time. He can come in the box, of course, as well, play that kind of de facto will linebacker spot with his size and length and athleticism. I don't think he's going to confuse anybody for a, fantastic cover corner in space. Like I think, maybe against some more truly, if he doesn't get their hands on them, some of those more shifty speed slots, he might have some issues with. But I mean, that's the body type, right? That's just a kind of, when you're a little bit bigger, P equals MV. Momentum is mass times velocity. So when he's bigger, it's going to be a little bit harder to change direction if he's going one way. So I think if you're looking for more of like a true matchup against a wide receiver in the slot safety type, you're looking at Jahdae Barron, who also made a lot of money this weekend, Scott, from Texas. But Emmanwori, he can do all of it. And my big question from, and also another guy, that was another one I wanted to bring up.
Had a great combine too.
Yes. But Emmanwori, my biggest complaint about him is that sometimes I feel like he's a little hesitant to trigger downhill for how big he is. Right? Like you should see much more violence coming downhill in the alley than you do from him. And that's some of the safety spot, right? He doesn't want to make sure his first assignment is to not get beat deep. But that's one thing that you hope over time he can get a little bit better at, that triggering downhill. But he's athletic enough. Just don't, get him matched up in space against, if you possibly can, against, Justin Jefferson in the slot, and get him a little better downhill, and because he has the potential. He's got a chance to be a really, really incredible safety. And I don't want to sell too short. I mean, Malachi Starks, he didn't run as fast as Emmanwori in the jumps and stuff, but he was one of the top in all the GPS drill data, which I'm curious. So, talk to me in 10 years, Scott. Hopefully we're all still here. That we'll see how the GPS data from the drills translates to hit rate compared to the testing metrics that we have.
Yeah, and what's interesting is a player like Tez Johnson, Oregon, who 154 pounds, ran a 4.5 140. Typically, that's just not good enough. There's a scale. If you're running a 5.4, you better be over 6 foot, and if you're under 6 foot, you better be running in the 4.4s. The bigger you are, the slower you can be. That's just kind of a line.
Yep.
But in the GPS data, he was the fastest guy at the combine. And his 3-cone, his agility drills, he was the fastest guy at the combine. So the 40 is about technique and start. He didn't get a good start, but everything else tells me he can fly. So, and including the game film and his separation. So those are the kind of things that all that goes into, the scouting as far as the final decision making. Luke, good to see you. He says, Denver will move up to 15. We need everyone. Drink. We need our joker. The Sean Payton's been talking about the joker position, and Denver Broncos fans have come to make that think that it's somebody, if they get the joker, it's something that nobody else has. Like a joker, there's only 2 on the deck. It's a wild card. Wow, if we can just get that position, nobody else could have that. We could really do something, and it's taken on mythical proportions. The Falcons have Bijan Robinson as a joker. It's a running back who can catch, or a tight end who can catch. That's it. And the Broncos are definitely in the market for tight end and running back. Will they need to move up to 15? Will they try to move up to 15? And if they do, what could the Falcons get to move back to 20? That could be a trade partner. Love to move back to 20. Could I get a second to move back from 15 to 20?
I think in this draft, it'd be a little hard to do that unless you're sending a 3rd-round pick or a future third back. I just think Denver at pick 51, I think they'd happily give you 85, that 3rd-round pick in that situation. But I think the trade value chart and considering the options that are going to be available, I think 51 and 20 would be hard to get.
I tried it on NFL mock draft database, just testing it before we get this, and it wouldn't let me do it. It said that's not enough. And the problem was I couldn't unclick it then, so I could go, okay, well, what is enough? And I had to restart. I'm like, okay, this is a pain in the ass. Yeah. So it's still just a shade buggy. But the NFL mock draft database would not do that trade. Would not send us a 2nd and 20 for number 15.
You'd probably have to send back something valuable.
And then they basically considered everything in round 6 to be worthless. I mean, in 2026 to be worthless. I'm like, well, what about a 5th from 2026? And like, no, it didn't move the needle at all.
Season. Yeah, that's not very valuable. If you're talking future picks, unless it's just kind of swaps at the end to get any value there, you probably have to throw in a top 100 pick.
Let me see. Floyd, good to see you. Says, good morning, Scotty Nick. Been a while. Good to see you, Floyd. Harry, see you in the draft as well. Chris Walker, one of the OGs, been with us from the very beginning. Good to see you as well. I think we hit a lot of these questions already. And then we can, Michael Lane has one here. It says, morning, Scott and Nick. Do you think our best bet would be make a trade back into the 2nd and grab a 2nd and 3rd this year, or maybe a handful for next year? No, we may not get a true starter at edge, but they can at least bolster the roster a little better, right? I'm of the opinion that we're going to be here next year. Okay. We're going to be here next year. We always want to do what is in the best interest long-term for the Atlanta Falcons because we are the ones that will be here. This is a job for everybody else. Okay. Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris have no guarantees of being here in 2026. I do not think they can afford to trade for prospects or to try and move down for 2026 picks. And I don't think they can afford to move down for somebody with maybe a higher upside, but they're not counting on right away because they won't be here if they don't succeed in 2025. They need impact guys in the 1st and 2nd round now. They need them now. Now, if I could get 2 more 2nd round picks for my 1st, and I have 3 2nd round picks, maybe, I could get a linebacker, I could get a safety, I could get a corner. Maybe I don't get the edge I want to. Maybe I mix things up a little bit because I've got some good depth on the defensive line and I change things around. And Zach Harrison finally, gets to play 50% of the snaps. But I just, when it comes down to making trades for projects, Shamar Stewart, I can't believe we haven't brought his name up yet today.
I did.
Future picks, I don't think they can afford to. I don't think they've got the time, Nick.
The one thing I will say that's kind of counter this is that the more you trade back or the further you are from number 1 overall, the more the draft pick is a investment and it's more about the future. So if you trade from 15 to 30 in this class, you're probably losing year 1 impact. Now, maybe that's supplemented by having an additional dice roll there as well. But there's just I know a lot of Broncos fans, or just fans in general, you're like, oh, why didn't you take a tight end in the 4th round? Our tight end's terrible. Well, guess what? If you waited until the 4th round to take a tight end, odds are it's still not going to be very good in 2025. So that's one thing that the trading down doesn't always lend itself to immediate return on investment for a regime that needs to win right away. But to more so to your point, absolutely, when it comes to future draft picks, like teams that are stable in their head coach and general manager, and you feel pretty good about the build of the team, if you can trade back 10, 20 spots and double your investment by getting a future top 100 pick as well at the same time, that's money. That's the best you can do. But I'm with you, Scott. This regime, not in a situation where they can really get away with that right now.
That said, the bar has been set so low at a couple positions that you can get somebody like that and it's an upgrade. Okay, he's not the finished product. No, he's got upside, and no, we're expecting him to struggle. The Falcons struggled, okay, last year. I mean, we saw the pass rush for most of the season. We saw the backside of the defense for most of the season. We saw poor Nate Landman and J.D. Bertrand in acres of space trying to cover, linebackers trying to cover running backs with nobody else near them in the open field. It looked like Senior Bowl drills, where I say, okay, if you can get somebody that can even get close to that guy in all this space and acres of space, you've got something. There's a reason why the Falcons missed so many tackles. They were never near any of the players. There wasn't like, okay, he's draped all over him, completes him and drops him in a catch. No. They're dropping 20 yards off the ball, catching and then trying to rally. It was dreadful. So, and that said, I think just with the two biggest needs on this team is linebacker and safety. If I can get an extra day 2 in there, I think you could get an impact player at linebacker and safety on those days. And because, they might not be Pro Bowlers, but they're going to improve the team right away. That's what I mean. It's like, no, when I say impact, I mean impact for the Falcons. They impact this defense. They make this defense better. Not that they're just automatic Pro Bowlers. Do you get better? Theoretically, a day 2 linebacker or safety should be a big improvement over the play that the Falcons got last year.
Yeah. In theory, I mean, it's always every single one of these is a investment, and you have to consider the relative risk of each one. But yeah, you're going to have to hope that it is. I mean, linebacker can be a little bit more of a slow burn position, and it's hard to evaluate too, Scott. I think the college game is so different in terms of the hash marks and the spacing and the talent and the asks that it makes it pretty darn hard to correctly evaluate and put these guys in the best situation. So,
and linebacker has so much to do with experience, your ability to read and anticipate. Again, I'd be perfectly happy with a $7 million free agent linebacker in the middle, and then see what happens with Bertrand, Landman, and Anderson. If Anderson can't stay healthy, I think he's in the last year of his contract anyway. And Bertrand and Landman were undrafted free agents and I think a 7th round pick. Those are typically the guys who fight to try and make a roster. Not I'm penciling them in and I'm writing them in Sharpie into the starting lineup. If they become those guys, great. But they're not those guys. They should be fighting for roster spots in 2025.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, ideally you're taking a linebacker round 3 through 5 somewhere, and you're doing that every other year, and hopefully one of those guys ends up being a starter. I think that's the way to go at this point. But unless they are offering a unique skill set with pass rush ability, somebody like a Jihad Campbell, who is a very unique player, or Jalen Walker, a little bit of a combine faller, didn't measure as big or long as we had hoped. But yeah, we'll see what happens here, Scott. And any other people stand out? I think I mentioned already, Jahdae Barron had a pretty good combine. The fact that he ran so well is really good considering the ball production and the versatility he possesses. If you're looking for like a Devon Witherspoon, slot safety type of player, he could be heck of a one. I mean, considering how all teams want to play nickel these days, your slot better freaking be able to tackle. And the days of the small diminutive shrimp slots out there that are playing against your Wes Welkers, those days are over. You're having freaking tight end body types playing the slot these days. So you need to have some tackling. He's one who rose a bit for me as well. We didn't mention any of the defensive tackles yet, other than Mason Grant, but Kenneth Grant's got to be in the conversation for 15 with his size and everything. It's unfortunate we didn't see him test. Walter Nolan as well. So you're going to have options at 15. Honestly, Scott, I'm curious as we get closer to this, if you have a guy who's your guy here at pick 15. I know you have your not guys right now. I know that you've been settling a little bit more on Mike Green. I will say, just same with James Pierce. I know I've heard, I guess I can't say I know for a fact because I haven't seen the boards, but coming out of the combine, I've been told there are teams who have Mike Green off their board for the stuff in his past. So is that lies to, hopefully get him dropped down? I don't know. But it's out there right now.
Yeah, and J.D. Bertrand was a 5th rounder last year, and again he played like a 5th round rookie linebacker last year. He shouldn't be guaranteed a roster spot in 2025. And then D. Alford struggled last year, and again he was actually in my mentions the other day on Twitter, and I just like, listen, we've been tough on D. Alford, and I always try and back myself with that, saying that the scheme never really gave those guys a chance. They really didn't. So it's not necessarily on D. D has played well for this team. Justin Simmons has played well in this league. Matt Judon has played well in this league. They didn't play well for the Atlanta Falcons last year. Mike Hughes has been okay. He's been okay. Chance Mike Hughes could be back, but Mike Hughes needs to be back as a depth piece competing for a spot. Last year, I felt like the starting lineups were set before the draft. And those guys looked way, way too comfortable last year. They looked way too comfortable, in my opinion, last year. There needs to be competition at just about every single spot. And it needs to go into the preseason, Nick. I'm tired of this 40 guys sit out preseason games.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to it here. Let me see. And Chris is thinking with you. He said, I wouldn't waste a pick on Green unless I had inside knowledge that the allegations were a lie, and I don't think that's possible. Again, with him, if I'm about to dump, what would we look it up? It was something like $20 million for a 15 pick last year. If I'm about to put $20 million, I can put $250,000 into a deep dive background check. I can get the best hacker in the world to find everything there is to know about that. So let me see here. And Chris says, has a talent evaluation of the Falcons improved enough to make a difference in who they pick this year? I don't know how much has changed through the staff. And again, part of this has been different defensive coordinators, different offensive coordinators, and just bad situations. You know, you go to, these guys go to certain teams and thrive. And then, you know, how many guys have, I just contradicted myself because I was going to say, how many guys have left the Atlanta Falcons and really kicked ass somewhere else? Well, that would speak to poor evaluations, wouldn't it? So it's, I don't know. We're going to be here trying to think what would be best for the Atlanta Falcons. If I predicted what I think the Atlanta Falcons will do, to be Shamar Stewart, and he's going to be a huge bust. Because I'm a cynic, and that's how this franchise has operated for, well, my whole life. So on that note, let's get this thing started here. Let's hit play on this. We're using NFL mock draft database. They're a little too adsy, but we'll be all right. We'll go through that. We're at 15. See, we're offered a 2026 1 and 2 for a 4th and a 6th from the Ravens. I wouldn't do that because that takes me one pick on day one. I mean, if I was a brand new general manager, this is 2021, I'd take a 1st and a 2nd in 2026 to move down from 15. But with my ass on the line, no, you're not getting my 2025 picks for 2026, Nick.
Yeah.
Look who's there at 9. That's where you get Sean Payton on the phone with Ashton Genty sitting there and Tyler Warren and say, hey, why don't you send me your 2nd and we'll move down. Membo has talked about being, you know, the top guy, the top offensive lineman off the board after this weekend. I'm not doing offensive tackle when I've got James Pierce Jr., Malachi Starks, Shamar Stewart. This is why we want to trade down. I would be content with James Pierce Jr., Malachi Starks, Shamar Stewart later, not at 15, Walter Nolan, and that's pretty, and maybe even Jahad Campbell if I got down to 25.
I bet you if you kept scrolling down, Aman Warrior would be there too.
Oh, he's 32 is where he's ranked on this, so he's there also. So I would on this one, where would you go here, Nick?
I would probably go Shamar Stewart, but if you're not concerned about the character stuff and you want the obvious immediate pass rushing, then James Pierce Jr. stands out here because I just feel like he's at the very least, you're going to get a very good 3rd down pass rusher who's going to be able to get you 8+ sacks a year. And there's a lot of value to that, especially with how much you rotate. Like, oh, he's not going to do the early down stuff. Well, there'll be some packages where he is early down, but the money down's 3rd down. And at the end of the day, you're going to rotate enough of these guys anyway. They're going to play 60 to 75% of the snaps that you can figure out a rotation to get him. Like, what did Brian Burns just get paid? Brian Burns is not a good run defender either, but he's bendy, twitched, built similar to James Pierce. So if we're not taking Stewart here, that stands out. Maybe Kenneth Grant, just because he's such a unique build, size, the pass rushing potential. He stands out a lot as well. But if we're not doing Stewart out of these ones, then I think we can talk James Pierce Jr. with a caveat that he could be completely off the Falcons board.
So on and T-Mac says, I'm aware you have reservations regarding Shamar Stewart's lack of sack production at A&M. But the new D-line coach in Atlanta, I'm rolling the dice, tired of chasing these skinny-legged edge guys. And for me, on this one right here, I mean, it screams trade down. Yeah. It just screams trade down for me. If I could move back to 20 and pick up another day 2 pick and pick up a third, I would do it in a heartbeat. For me, the 2 picks right here come down between James Pierce Jr. and Malachi Starks. Now, I know safety isn't the premium position, but is he a premium player? Is Malachi Starks a premium player where I can turn a strength into a superpower like we were hoping the Falcons were going to do with Justin Simmons last year? Can Malachi Starks be that guy next to Jesse Bates? If you think he can, he's absolutely in play right here. I don't know that. I haven't watched him enough that I'm going edge right here because it's a bigger need, a little bit higher. And for with y'all for Shamar Stewart, and there is another 7th, Chris. It just hasn't hit the board yet. It's part of the Taylor Heineke trade, and I don't know why it hasn't hit any of these boards yet. It hasn't been finalized. With Shamar Stewart, the day of the combine, I had just gotten done going through all the team stuff on the Senior Bowl. I know why he only gets 1.5 sacks a year, because he can't get off a block. Just flat out cannot. The other team was taking him out of the equation with tight ends. Now, he played at 280 pounds at A&M, and he played at 280. He weighed in at 281 at the Senior Bowl. And he is a finesse player. There's talk about, he should move inside. Are you joking? Have you watched him? No, you haven't. You have not watched him play if you think he should move inside, because he cannot play inside. He plays wide because he can't get off blocks. He has to beat guys with agility, which he was not able to do at the college level. Is that going to get better at the NFL level? If he's a good hitter, why doesn't he hit good? Now, at 265, he may have the speed and agility, because that's what he weighed in. He lost 15 pounds over the month of February for the combine. At 265, he might have that quickness to beat an NFL tackle. At 280, he did not at the college level. I don't want Shamar Stewart at 15.
Yeah.
Adafa Owe had very similar numbers. Adafa Owe went 31. That's where I start getting interested. And Adafa Owe was a better player. He was more physical. He was more productive. He had a better motor, and he went 31. And his pro day numbers were off the charts. That's where I start getting interested in Shamar Stewart. Here, no way. Absolutely no way. He is off of my board in the first round.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about Malachi Starks is that I feel like he's a little bit, safety is a lot like running back, where I feel like it's a little bit more cherry on top for the build that already exists on your defense. So if you feel very solidified in your front 7, I think you can amplify the value of that safety. But if you're not getting home, if you're struggling with, filling in lanes, you don't really have the, again, just the infrastructure in the front 7 to take advantage of that rookie contract with Starks. I am a little bit less interested, unless you think he's going to be a no doubt Hall of Fame guy. I don't feel that way. I don't get the same feelings watching him as I did Derwin James coming out or Minkah Fitzpatrick, but he's very good. So again, I think he's got a very high floor. If you're not interested in Stewart, I think that we'll just obviously mention the character stuff, but take James Pierce here.
And D-Mac says, Scott, you really like these skinny, undersized guys, edge rushers. D-Mac, I just went through this. I want to trade out of this spot. And this is why, because there isn't anybody I love at this spot. What I really don't like are 280-pound guys that play like skinny, undersized edge guys. That's what I really don't like, is those guys. I can take a skinny guy and put weight on him. It's really hard to put a motor in a guy that doesn't have one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd have to meet Stewart to be okay with him, but if he passed the character stuff, I'd be okay with him at 15. But I'm okay with a little bit more of the risk there, which is, here we are.
Oh, you see who's on the board. I'm not coming out of this spot. You see who's sitting there on the board at 32.
Yep.
This is where you get lucky. Oh, safety. You can't take a safety that high. So maybe he falls. Maybe he falls to 45. I would probably take this. I would take a trade like this to pick up another pick. Just drop 7 spots and pick up a 5th.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be very interested until I look up at the board and see Nick Emenwari, who is the cover of today's show, is sitting there at safety. Is cornerback a better value, bigger need? Yeah. I can get a difference maker here in a spot where I have an opening spot on my depth chart. I want Emenwari here.
You should go Emenwari here. I just want to give a quick shout out to Donovan Ezaraku. Questions about his athleticism, closing speed, and everything, because he's got a lot of different pass rush moves, and he tested really well.
So Nick, I did this beforehand, and I don't remember if I took Mike Green, but I took an edge. I might have even taken Will Johnson. That was a question we had earlier. Would you consider Will Johnson when he fell to 15? Absolutely. I think that will be the hardest decision to make, is if Mike Green and Will Johnson are both on the board between those two. Then can I trade to 16 and pick up a spot and take whoever's still there? Will Johnson is absolutely on the table. Cornerback, you've got a 0 at cornerback 2 right now. There's nobody even on the roster. Mm-hmm. So can you take and plug a premium into a premium position with your number 15? Yes, you can. Now, when I did this earlier, this was why I went and I did it twice, because Ezaraku was there also. I'm like, well, I just went edge. The best guy on the board is Ezaraku. And I took edge again. And then I get down to 117. And there's a 00 from UCLA. And Jared Ivey's still on the board. I'm like, well, hell, the best position again is edge. So in this one, I'm going safety. I'm taking my difference maker here, my cover boy this morning.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with it. I mean, my problem is he's probably not there. But that's okay.
D-Mac, you got to chill or go somewhere else. Okay. It's a mock draft. I don't need the snark today.
Yeah. We'll go different directions at some point, as well. So you're sitting
Walter
here.
Nolan was in play there. Kenneth Grant was in play there.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't an edge there that I absolutely was in love with. Emenwari at 45, I'm in love with. That's the pick. That's the pick you can be snarky about, because I love that pick. I wasn't in love with any of the picks at 15.
Yep. So we got a trade offer here. 3 trade offers. I mean, yeah, thank you, Eagles, but not this year. Jets as well.
Nope.
Yeah, too far.
See, now this is interesting. How about 3 extra? I moved down 40 spots and get 3 more 7th round picks.
I don't think I want any 7ths in this class. It's a small group. I think after the 4th round, I'm not as interested. So we're sitting here. You have a 4th rounder. You already took a safety, which is a little too bad there.
Yeah, I'd love corner linebacker here if I can. But, Chris Paul is someone we've taken also.
I like Gillette.
But this is the guy. There's no way he goes 109.
No, that's too low.
There's just no way. I mean, this feels like a cheat. Oluola, 00.
They call him Femi, the last part of the first name.
Femliola Dejo. This is the guy right here that will not be there. This is the cheat code for this draft right now, for this mock draft.
Can you click cornerback at the top here? I just want to see if there's a guy that I wanted to highlight a little bit as well. He might already be gone. Scroll down. He might be gone. Okay, I just wanted to give a shout out to Parrish from Kansas State. He's a little bit smaller, but man, he had a heck of a combine. I really love the tape, Scott. I think he's somebody who's going to go in the top 60. And if you guys took him in the 2nd round, I would have no issue with it at all. So Chris Paul stands out here for me. Good. He's a little bit smaller. Also, Jeffrey Bassa had a good time. Kaiser, this is a good spot to get a linebacker if you haven't already.
Who would you take? You need the line. We need a linebacker here again. I'll tell you who I'd take right here. I would take either Ivy or OO of the guys I know, of Femio here. Ivy's 285 pounds with inside outside capability. He's not as twitchy by any stretch as Shamar Stewart, but he's a much better football player, and you can move him inside. He slid inside and played defensive tackle in pass rush situations, and he's strong at the point of attack. So I could go this way if I don't like any of the linebackers, but if there's I've seen a lot of people talk Kobe Bryant.
I like Kobe Bryant. He's really, really thin. He competes well, though. I also like Noah Williams from Cal, a good player there as well. Transferred from Louisiana Tech, one of the Louisiana directional schools, I think. But he's interesting. Also want to shout out to Upton Stout down there a little bit too. Only 5'8", but there he goes. He had as many bench press reps, Scott, as Kenneth Grant did at the combine. He is just an absolute firecracker. Really, really like Upton Stout from Western Kentucky.
This is where I usually cheat and get Shamar James is really good. Or I saw Cam Jackson. I think he just went off the board. A developmental offensive tackle. If there's someone here I was in love with, I could be real interested. This is not a bad place to get a wide receiver. Also, Baron Sorrell's not bad at edge, though. I feel pretty good there. Jarquez Hunter should be off the board by now. Golly. Jarquez Hunter had a great combine, and Keandre Lambert-Smith had a great combine too. Fourth leading receiver in SEC, went and ran a 4.38, and he's probably ranked down here in the 250s.
The one who stands out for me is we haven't taken a linebacker yet. The linebacker from Minnesota. I thought he had a pretty good Senior Bowl. Cody Lindenberg moves pretty well, and this is, even if you're talking about a second string, third string guy, I think he's got a chance to be a pretty good one. So I really like him.
Yeah, I like Eugene Asante. He ran 4.4s too, I believe. You went 3 defensive tackles last year, and one of them didn't make the team, Zion Logue, but you've got Dorless and Rook Arohoro in there. And if you don't take a defensive tackle in the first with one of those guys, again, Walter Nolan would have been under consideration at 16 also. I would have listened to Walter Nolan. I'm not listening to Shamar Stewart at 15. I keep saying 16. At 15. Again, but for me, my takeaway every time I do these is trade down. I want to move down so bad out of that 15 spot into the mid-20s because there's not a player there that I'm absolutely in love with that has come up where I see I like 6 of these guys about the same. Okay, let's scream trade down. But I love this pick. If he's there at 46, it's a steal. But I should have an immediate impact guy on third downs in here, and then I can go big and earlier downs, and then I've got competition in the defensive backfield, and I got my starter at safety, and then more competition at linebacker, and then I better hit the I should pick the Corey Lindbergh linebacker. I forgot what I was going to say because D-Mac, have a good day. Threw me off on this.
James Pierce, Nick Manawari, Kobe Bryant, Cody Lindbergh. 4 picks on the defense. We lived up to what the Falcons are only sending their defensive coaches, right? We did have offers for trade downs. We'll see what happens with the trade downs. I think there's a good chance that the Falcons will. Maybe at some point we'll work that out as well. But again, this is a pretty good mock. I'm the only one that I'm not overly in love with is just James Pierce because of the questions about the background stuff. But we talked about it. 15, we had all these options that were fine, oh yeah, that's a B-, but nothing that we were infatuated with. So let's say you switch that out for Mike Green, you switch that out for Will Johnson, and then you take Femi Olu there at 117, then you're talking about a A+ mock in my book. But we're just working at different situations here and scenarios and trying to logic through the directions we go. So it makes sense to me. The one that's not happening, and I think what's more likely here, Scott, is you flip Manawari and James Pierce Jr. with Manawari going 15 and Pierce going 46. I think that's more closer to reality right now.
Yeah, we'll see. These are the ones I like to save and be like, okay, this is where we got these guys. Where did they actually go? Because 00 is one of theirs. And some on this one, is there any reason why our 5th pick isn't out? I don't know. There was supposed to be another 7th round pick as part of the Taylor Heineke trade. I don't know why it hasn't finalized. Maybe it waits until the new year and they haven't been able to place it yet, which is coming up in next week, March 12th. first day of the new league year, because I don't have an answer for you why it's not on the board yet. But there's supposed to be another 7 that it just hasn't finalized yet.
I'm looking at the board right now at Pro Sports Transactions. They do a pretty good job, and there's 2 7th-round picks for the Falcons that are kind of up in the air. Right. There's a bunch of different scenarios that have to play out. What I'm seeing for the Heineke trades is they're 2026 picks, not 2025, based on playing time.
Yep. So we'll see. On that note, we're going to get out of here. We hit 1 hour. Want to say thanks to our Super Chat superstars. There were lots of you today. Michael Ronquillo coming in early. Coach, Keith and Ellen Johnson, Rusty, Gary O, and Luke Wright. Good to see y'all. Appreciate you being here. We will be back on Wednesday as we get 1 day closer to a self-imposed deadline of the Kirk Cousins news, which is March 12th. Is the day that if he's still on the roster on March 12th, it costs an extra $10 million, and there's more likelihood he will be on the roster in 2025 as they hold on and maybe try and get a trade for him later on, and they're going to pay $10 million in order to try and get a better deal than what they're able to get right now. So we'll see on that. We're going to get out of here. Nick, Luke asked, appreciate it. He says, you and Nick going to go live on draft day? Yes, but we'll see if we're together. I'd like to have Nick with me again for as long as possible, but he also has Broncos stuff to do. I'm not doing Broncos, as you know. So I'll be here. I don't know if I can. We might start at 10. I don't think I can start at the beginning and go all the way through the Falcons pick at 15 by myself. My voice would give out. So
especially when they trade back. They're like, oh, they traded back to 31.
All right, y'all. Appreciate you being here. Enjoy a wonderful week in the Southeast. It is going to be a gorgeous week. Hope y'all have a good rest of your Monday. Maybe you got a couple days off. Kids are home from school here in Fulton County. So thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, peace.